Welcome, everyone, to the Consumer Reports State of the Consumer Movement webinar. It has been a tumultuous few months for us in the consumer rights biz and for our consumer rights in general. We are seeing huge changes at many of our government consumer watchdog agencies that directly impact your family's health, safety, and financial security. My name is Alan. I'm an organizer with Community Reports. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm calling into this webinar today from Brooklyn, New York. And I am joined on this call by all kinds of wonderful folks who I will introduce in a moment. But first, I want to take you through a quick agenda about what we are going to be speaking about today. We're going to do a high-level check-in on the state of our consumer rights and protections. We're going to scattershoot around a bunch of amazing Consumer Reports experts that I get the pleasure of working with every day and talk about their different areas and what they're seeing in their watchdogging of different Consumer Reports issues. So we're going to hear from people on the state of the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the Food and Drug Administration, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Transportation, and we're going to do a deep dive into attacks on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is the one that holds big banks, mortgage lenders, credit card companies, all those things accountable. I'm joined for all of this by a cavalcade of Consumer Reports, consumer protections connoisseurs. Alex Gross, who is the Senior Policy Counsel, Sustainability and Safety. Gabe Knight, who is a Senior Policy Analyst focused on product safety. Delon Jaff, who is also a policy analyst who's more focused on cars than Gabe, but has a lot of overlap. And then Brian Ronholm, who was our Director of Food Policy. And then also, finally, all those folks are my Consumer Reports colleagues. Also, Kate Barthelme is here. She's going to be in the chat and helping us make sure things run correctly. And then joining us from the Hip Hop Caucus, Stefan Coward, who is the Economic Justice Paid in Full campaign director. Really excited to chat with all of you today. Before we get to any of these wonderful people, though, for those of you who have been in these calls before, you know it's time for some housekeeping. Things to note. And Kate, if you could advance the slide to the housekeeping slide, we are going to record this entire webinar, which means that we can send it around to everyone afterwards. If there's going to be a lot of information that's coming at you pretty quickly and quite a lot of acronyms, lots of different government agencies that we're going to be talking. So I would say the best way to absorb this is it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose, but we will do our best to get through all this stuff. But don't worry if you miss something, because we are recording. We're going to send it around to everyone after the fact. And most importantly, we will also send around all of the links and different things that you may have missed as they zip by. That will all go in a single follow-up email to everyone. So don't worry too much about that. We also do have closed captioning and a couple other functionalities of this Zoom call that I want to draw your attention to, including the ability, I'm seeing many of you already jumping in the chat, and some of you are already also asking your questions in the Q&A. Love to see that. Please use both of those over the course of today's call. And then we do have a few rules of the road to make sure that everyone has a good time and that we can keep this conversation respectful and open. So please abide by our community code of conduct that includes assuming best intentions of all participants, volunteers, speakers, and Consumer Reports staff. Please be mindful of understanding of fellow participants who are coming from different experiences. Please speak to your own perspectives and your own stories. And please refrain from any personal attacks or comments on appearance, on voices. Let's focus on the topics that we have under discussion. I know that everyone's going to do that. We're not going to have any problems. I like to just say all of that up top so that we get it out of the way. By attending this webinar, you are agreeing to these ground rules, and that means if you don't adhere to these ground rules, we do have permission to remove you from this discussion. That's not going to happen. I'm not worried. All right. So we know that there are a series of different consumer rights that are being rolled back by this administration and this Congress. From your right to be treated fairly by the big banks and financial industry to strong privacy protections, even the right to safer food and water. These are fairly dramatic changes that are being made to the structures that have been building safer marketplaces for consumers for decades. Uh, Consumer Reports is watching all this. We're seeing some bright spots in addition to a lot of backsliding. Bright spots in campaigns we've been working on in some cases for more than a decade. Attempts to get toxic dyes out of food, for example, or harmful lead and other things out of infant formula. But the changes are coming so quickly that it can be hard, even if you spend all of your time just keeping track. It can be hard to keep up with all the different things that are happening. So we're going to do some quick hits now from all of my wonderful colleagues with some of the amazing folks that I mentioned just a second ago, who are each going to tell you what they are watching right now, why it matters, and hopefully a little bit of what we can all do about it. So I'm going to invite to come on mic and on camera the indomitable Gabe Knight. Welcome, Gabe. What's going on in the world of product safety?
Hi there, Alan. Thanks so much. And hi, everybody. I'm Gabe Knight. A government agency responsible for protecting Americans from unsafe consumer products is currently under attack, and now it needs protection itself. A small but mighty independent federal watchdog has been working to keep the public safe since it was created by Congress in 1972. Even if you've never heard of this agency, you and your loved ones have benefited from its tireless work. It has helped spur a 47% decrease, and poisonings have decreased by 80%. Deaths from refrigerator door entrapments and garage door incidents have been virtually eliminated. Crib deaths have plummeted by 80%, and injuries associated with baby walkers have been slashed by 88%. The agency I'm referring to is the Consumer Product Safety Commission, or the CPSC. Last month, a draft budget proposal surfaced that revealed the White House's plans for the CPSC eliminate the independent bipartisan federal agency that Congress created more than 50 years ago and put the Department of Health and Human Services in charge of carrying out its functions and overseeing the safety of more than 15,000 types of product categories. Since I joined Consumer Reports 4.5 years ago, I've supported the CPSC's work on creating strong safety standards for unstable dressers that were tipping over and killing small children, portable generators that were causing carbon monoxide deaths and poisoning, lethal water beads that were deceptively marketed as non-toxic sensory toys to children, and much more. But Consumer Reports has been working with the CPSC to push for a safer, more consumer-centered marketplace since before I was born. Since the CPSC's inception, Consumer Reports has supported the agency's mission to protect the public from unreasonable risks associated with hazardous consumer products and hold companies accountable for wrongdoing. Should this administration's misguided and reckless plans come to fruition, Americans, and particularly the most vulnerable, including infants, children, and older Americans, would be left at risk of being harmed by unsafe products. Given the enormity of what's at stake here, we knew we had to fight back with an all-hands-on-deck approach and move quickly. Almost immediately, we released a statement calling on the White House to abandon their plans and for Congress to step up, assert itself, defend the agency that they created, and reject any attempts to undermine their lawmaking powers. When the CPSC's 3 Democratic commissioners were legally fired earlier this month because they objected to staffers from DOJ joining the agency, we publicly condemned the move and called for the commissioners to be reinstated. Again, strongly urged Congress to defend the agency it created decades ago and reject this dangerous partisan power grab. Alongside our incredible product safety coalition partners, we've brought together parent and consumer advocates to provide a rundown of what exactly is happening, answer their questions, and equip them with messaging to use in their own advocacy efforts. We've participated in media conferences, both virtual and in person, alongside members of Congress, parent advocates, and the unlawfully fired commissioners themselves to spread the word about what's at risk and make it clear to the public that if the CPSC can't carry out its work independently, American families all over the country will suffer the consequences of a more dangerous marketplace. We've also fired off action alerts to our members, giving concerned consumers the tools that they need to send a direct message to their elected representatives, urging them to do their job and protect the CPSC. But we need your help. We need everybody to join in and urge your senators and representatives to do the right thing, to defend this vital safety watchdog. Congress members on both sides of the aisle have supported the CPSC's work for decades, but now all of that is at risk. It's time for action, and I hope we can count on you to hold Congress accountable.
Yes, thank you, Gabe. I'm gonna drop a few things in the, so here's how this is gonna go, y'all. I'm gonna drop a few things into chat now that kind of underline and are for different ways of thinking about the questions that Gabe was just bringing up. Here is an article written by our own Lauren Kirchner about the state of the CPSC right now. See, I get tripped over the acronyms too. And I'm also going to drop an action alert here so that anyone who wants to can send an email directly to your congressperson about the CPSC. And also, I would really love if you guys could put any questions you have for Gabe about the state of this particular institution into the Q&A. We're going to have a section after everyone drops in and tells us a little bit of what they're working on. We're going to have a section where we're going to have time for a few questions to answer over the air, but also Gabe will be furiously typing away in Q&A. So, all right, I'm going to bring Alex in. Alex Gross is the Senior Policy Counsel for Sustainability and Safety here, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in the world of sustainability.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm just going to dive right in. During the first Trump administration, environmental protections faced significant setbacks. Key actions included deregulation of industries, particularly those related to energy and emissions, largely overseen by the Environmental Protection Agency, or as Alan mentioned, the EPA. Under the EPA and the Clean Air Act, pollution was decreased by a whopping 80% nationally since its inception. Similarly, under EPA's purview, the Clean Water Act has diverted 700 billion pounds of pollution from America's rivers. These are two success stories of many. So far, President Trump's second term has been a firestorm compared to his first. It's included rolling back rules aimed at reducing carbon emissions and protecting communities from environmental harms like contamination, pollution, and toxins. Instead, the administration is focused on loosening regulations to boost the economy and has launched more repeals and rollbacks on rules, that's a tongue twister, protecting our environment in just the first 100 days of his second term than he did in his entire first 4-year term. The EPA operates under an endangerment finding, which determined that climate change pollutants threaten public health and welfare. This determination is the basis of many of the environmental laws we currently have, and President Trump has asked for a re-evaluation of this finding altogether. Trump's big, beautiful budget cuts EPA funding by nearly 55% for the fiscal year 2026 budget. This would cut at least a quarter of EPA staff, probably more. Completing these rollbacks, thankfully, in many cases, will take time. Enacted rules often take years to undo or require new rulemakings, which can also take years. Many are subject to legal challenges, which I'm sure you've seen all over the news lately. Still, the administration is doing a lot with the tools that they have available to them as quickly as they can, sometimes completely disregarding the laws that exist, prior precedent, and the processes that are typically followed. So, what does that mean for consumers? If the administration succeeds in hollowing out the EPA, we're going to see more air pollution, more water pollution, and more exposure to toxic chemicals. So far, some of the actions that are in motion include winding back rules on toxins such as mercury, which there is no safe level of exposure, exempting dozens of coal power plants from clean air rules, plans to weaken PFAS, a class of forever chemicals as they're called, in drinking water. PFAS does not break down, so if it stays in our environment and our bodies, it's there forever. It's been linked to kidney disease, low birth weight, high cholesterol, and cancer, to name a few. Rolling back clean car standards, which Sean will talk more about later, but I wanted to mention, is probably going to lead to increased fuel costs at the pump, higher purchase prices for cars, and poorer air quality. Eliminating EPA's Energy Star program, which allows buyers to compare the energy use of dozens of appliances. It saved consumers and businesses a staggering $500 billion on energy costs since its inception in 1992. That works out to $350 in savings for every dollar spent on the program. I don't want to fearmonger, but it's kind of inevitable here these days. I want to end on a positive note. We are hearing that Congress is getting record numbers of phone calls from constituents about these issues, and that doesn't go unnoticed. Deregulation takes time and process, so many of these actions won't happen overnight, which makes your activism even more important. Additionally, we're working really hard at the state level to make sure consumers are protected by their states while the federal government is falling short. So I want to thank you for your time and being engaged and doing your part to make sure that we can keep families safe. Alan, over to you.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that rundown. Um, I want to verbalize a few things that I saw in the chat as you were speaking. One thing is EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency, and everyone, as you run through what you're looking at these days, be acronym sensitive. At least the first couple times, try to define, what the agency is and what its purview is, all those sorts of things. And then also. I'm seeing some dialogue about our asking folks to post to X. We are very much looking here at Consumer Reports, other prompts to post. I think that there's sort of an open question in my mind about how our social media world is whether or not the algorithm is allowing certain things to rise to the top regardless, but we're looking to make sure that we can get people on Blue Sky and LinkedIn and other sort of platforms to spread the word. Hopefully that will be something that we will be prompting you for soon. But in the meantime, just go over to Blue Sky and post it yourself. I do that all the time. All right, I am going to bring in Delon. No, I'm sorry. My order of operations is off. I'm going to bring in Brian Ronholm. Brian, who is our food policy director here at Consumer Reports. Brian, what's going on?
Thanks, Ellen. Hey, everyone. As Ellen mentioned, I'm Brian Ronholm, and I lead food policy for Consumer Reports. I am based out of Washington, D.C., and live just outside in Silver Spring, Maryland. Um, so I'm going to talk to you today just about how the impact of recent developments is doing with food policy and food safety, particularly as it relates to the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. So there have been significant cuts proposed and actually followed through on, as you've heard my colleagues talk about. And they've been very significant, and they have the potential to be pretty devastating, not only to the policy experts that these agencies are losing, particularly the FDA, but also to us consumers who rely on these experts to help prevent foodborne illness on a daily basis. So these cuts have that risk of endangering public health and the safety of our food supply. And they raise serious concerns about this administration's goal to make America healthy again, or MAHA, as you probably heard. So certainly if they want to move forward with plans to make America healthy again, it is going to require adequate investment in staffing and resources at the Food and Drug Administration and at HHS. So there have been encouraging statements that have come out of HHS and the FDA First and foremost is this pledge to really look at infant formula safety. And this was following our investigation that reported on test results of heavy metals in baby food products. It was shortly after we shared that information that they made the announcement that this was an issue that they wanted to focus on, which was great to hear that they could be so reactive, so responsive. But again, that's something that is going to require significant investment in staffing and resources. So while it's great to make a pledge to work on these issues, you need to support those pledges with that adequate investment in staffing and resources, or it runs the risk of just being another empty promise. They've also made some very positive announcements about addressing food chemicals and additives and food dyes. And you probably have seen the announcement where they want to ban food dyes, which is, of course, something that we strongly support. It's an issue that we've been working on for years. However, there was no substance behind that particular announcement, and that they were relying on a voluntary action from the industry to move forward with these bans. Well, this past week, there was a company that said that they weren't going to do that. So, in order to move forward with a ban like this, we're going to need it to be enforceable. And for it to be enforceable, you need investments in staffing and resources. So that's another critical point. So the message seemingly being conveyed by HHS and the FDA is consumers are going to be on their own when it comes to food safety. And that's very, very troubling because at this point, we're still at a stage where trying to figure out just where the impact of the cuts are going to be. They have indicated that they're bringing some people back, and you've seen those announcements where they had originally intended to close some labs. They are going to reopen some of that. They are going to bring some of those people back, but it's still very unclear as to what responsibilities those people have that are being brought back and what kind of capacity and infrastructure is going to be remaining in order to conduct just basic food safety oversight activities. And you have to remember that the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, has jurisdiction over 80% of our food supply. That's a significant amount of food that they can oversee. And so if they don't have the adequate resources to conduct that basic oversight, it really becomes troubling for consumers to keep track of it all. So that's kind of the scenario we're facing right now. We're still assessing uh, where the damage is, where the cuts are going to be, what capacity is going to be left. And this is everyone, consumers, industry, public health professionals, everyone's in the same position of just trying to figure out what kind of Food and Drug Administration will be left standing after everything shakes out. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you so much for your support. It's your support through subscriptions, through donations that really allow us to do this kind of work, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Back to you, Alan.
Yes, well put, well put. And as the questions pile up in our Q&A, I will be throwing some back to all of you in just a second. But I want to check in with our final CR expert on today's call, Delan.
Yeah, thanks, Alan, and thank you everyone for being here today. I'm going to be touching on a point that my colleague Alex brought up earlier, which was clean vehicles and what the administration is doing really to reduce access to clean vehicle technology across the country. What we know is that previous administrations have taken strong action to increase access to cost-saving technology, regardless of that technology. So this includes both gasoline vehicles and electric and hybrid vehicles. What we see this administration doing is that they're targeting standards that really touch across vehicle classes. So two of the issues that they have identified are fuel economy standards in addition to traditional emission standards. By removing emission standards, consumers will not see as much of the clean air benefits that comes with clean vehicles on the road. In addition, we know that electric vehicles over the lifespan of the vehicle can save consumers a ton of money. And by reducing access to these clean vehicle technology, we're not giving the consumers the ability to access cost-saving technology that could really help at a time like this. Another thing is reducing fuel economy standards removes our ability to push manufacturers to create more fuel efficient vehicles across vehicle classes, which is something that our surveys have shown that consumers want. Consumers want their vehicles to be more efficient, they want to spend less on fuel costs, and they want to have more money in their pockets. By removing our ability to push manufacturers on this level, we have no lever to make manufacturers move in a direction that is more beneficial for consumers. Additionally, one of the things that previous administrations have enacted are incentives for vehicle technology in addition to vehicle infrastructure. And as we know, vehicle infrastructure is a critical component to increasing access to clean vehicle technology across the country. One of the biggest burdens for somebody looking for a clean vehicle today is where will I charge my vehicle? And while previous administrations have been doing a great job to make sure that this infrastructure is more accessible across the country, regardless of where you are, there is the potential for these funds to go away under the current administration, and that will continue to hurt clean vehicle adoption as we move forward. A separate issue that is coming more to the forefront is a consumer rights issue, or sorry, a states' rights issue. Previously, what the Environmental Protection Agency has done has been given states like California the authority to enact emission standards stronger than those of the federal government. For example, California enacted the Advanced Clean Cars regulation, which required an uptick in electric vehicles sold in the state. In addition, other states were able to adopt these standards and follow California's lead in making sure that their states have increased access to clean vehicle technology. This has been a longstanding authority to the California government, and the current administration is looking to remove that authority. Not only will that hurt consumers and their ability to access electric vehicles, but one of the things that Consumer Reports was able to advocate for in the Advanced Clean Cars 2 regulation was the strongest consumer protections in the world for electric vehicles and electric vehicle batteries. In this rule, what we enacted was strong warranty protections for electric vehicle batteries that are stronger than any government has ever enacted. So by removing California's authority to enact the Advanced Clean Cars 2 rule, not only will we see a decrease in the number of electric vehicles sold to the market, but we'll also see a loss of a strong consumer protection in the form of clean vehicle warranties. What you can do now is reach out to your member of Congress and really express your support for one, clean vehicle technology, two, incentives, and three, the authority for states like California to uh, continue to enact their Advanced Clean Cars 2 rules. This is something that we're seeing going through Congress today. So anytime you have the ability to reach out to your member of Congress and support these policies, it'd be great.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Delon. We are going to get, I think I got time for like 2 questions, y'all, because there's going to be a really exciting conversation coming up with Stefan from the Hip Hop Caucus. But let's see, what do I want to dive into here? I think we have an interesting question for Brian. Brian, do you think that they're going to remove labeling requirements for food and nutrition thing? Are you interested in coming on back on for a second and addressing that question?
Yeah, I saw that question from Scott and actually was in the midst of typing out a response, but happy to answer on camera. Uh, we haven't received any indication that something like that is under consideration. And honestly, a big part of the reason is requirements like that are pretty popular among MAHA supporters, the Make America Healthy Again group of supporters. And that's a segment of voters that I think this administration would like to hold on to. So I can't imagine that they would move in that direction, because it would run counter to kind of the MAHA goals. So I think we're in a good position where a lot of those requirements will remain in place.
Wonderful. Let's see. Um, and then you know what? I'm gonna fire this one off because I've heard it a couple of times on a couple of different chats. And if anybody wants to jump in here, you don't have to be. It's for any of the four of you. Someone in DC wants to know how to be advocates for change as a resident of DC with taxation, but no direct representation. So I wonder what, if any of our Consumer Reports folks want to take a shot at what you would tell a DC person. How can they get involved if it's not just our same thing of talking to your congressperson? Anybody?
Hi there, Gabe Knight here. I would say it's certainly still worth engaging. You can tell folks, regardless of if you're in DC and don't have adequate representation or in a purple state, blue state, red state, that this is an important issue to you, that you'll be watching, you expect Congress to defend these important agencies that we've relied on for a long time to help keep us safe, and that you'd appreciate them speaking to their colleagues. Ask them to speak to fellow senators, ask them to speak to fellow representatives, ask them for what they're doing. Keep up the drumbeat. Be a gnat in their ear. As a constituent, it's their job to listen to you, and don't back down. Keep calling, keep writing the office, keep letting them know this matters to you.
And I want to hear from either Brian or Alex, but I also want to uplift what we just heard from Sylvia. A reminder, DC people are actually most able to attend some of those protests and demonstrations that are popping up outside of some of these agencies we've been discussing. So don't forget that you can be there in person and add to the sense that there is a groundswell behind these different movements. Brian?
Yeah, just real quick, as a former resident of the District of Columbia, I'll just talk through what I sometimes did when I was a resident, and also from a perspective of a former congressional staffer, is that I would first start with contacting the members that surround the district, both in Maryland and Virginia, and just let them know that in the absence of true representation, I'm coming to you for help. They love hearing that. But then I would also expand it to other congressional offices, even ones that oppose, and let them know, because I don't have true voting rights, I'm contacting your office for help, because I consider you as someone that represents my interests as well. Just so it creates a lot more work than a DC resident should be subject to, but certainly particularly the surrounding offices that the congressional offices that surround their DMV area um, would appreciate that type of inquiry and can be helpful.
All right. I'm going to move us forward here. Keep the questions coming. Friends in my CR colleagues, please jump in. I see a bunch of great questions that I would love us to be able to at least kind of start the debate. And you guys all should also have the ability to see the questions that are being answered. So, I'm sorry, asked. So if there are ones that you think are particularly interesting to you, give them an upvote and keep that conversation going. I know we are delivering information to you all in lots of different formats in lots of different places. So thank you for dealing with the different ways that this stuff is whizzing by you. Okay. So we plan to hold regular webinars which highlight the changes that consumers are facing. So this is not going to be your only chance to hear from Delon, Brian, Alex, Gabe, and others here at CR. And in fact, we will be doing this again in June, but hopefully each of these webinars will give us also a little time to do more than these 5 to 7 minute updates. And this month, we're going to be talking about what's going on in the world of financial protections. And to help orient us all in that conversation, I'm going to bring in Stefan Coward now. Stefan is the Economic Justice Paid in Full campaigns director at the Hip Hop Caucus. My first question for you today, sir, what does the Economic Justice Paid in Full campaign mean to you?
Thank you for having me, and I'm so happy to be here. And so, like, what it means to me is the simple truth that for me, justice isn't justice until it's paid in full for everyone, right? For me, it's advocating for an economy that works for everybody, promoting strategies that help us pull money from industries that are harming our communities and investing into economically, socially, and environmentally empowering solutions. It's standing in solidarity and mobilizing in solidarity with people who are demanding stronger consumer protections, good jobs, access to capital, fair housing. It's defending programs like the development financial institutions, greenhouse gas greenhouse gas reduction funding, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which are all vital for expanding affordable, resources for our communities and protecting our consumers. And when it comes to justice paid in full, this platform is about bold investments in climate, economic, and racial justice, and understanding that these fights are all intersectional. They're inextricably linked. And we leverage the culture to be able to engage young people in other communities, how they can be able to be more informed and engage in advocacy and activism in their community to create lasting change.
Amazing. Well, we are so happy that you're here to talk with us today, and I'll drop in the Hip Hop Caucus link in the chat in just a second. But we've hit a lot of different acronyms today, and one acronym that I think the first question asked us in the very first Q&A, Gail was asking us, "Can you give us hope that the CFPB can be restored?" Before I ask you that question, though, take us back. What is the history of the CFPB? And if I remember correctly from our previous conversations, you were sort of like at ground zero for this 2008 financial crisis, right?
Yes, I was. And so to give you a little story, like I'm based here in Arlington, Texas, so Dallas Fort Worth. In 2008, I was working at a large financial institution. I'll just say it. I was at Washington Mutual the day that Washington Mutual went under and got bought out by Chase. I was sitting at my desk. And
That is
so
ground zero. That is ground zero.
ground zero, can't get no more ground zero than that. And and so what we saw was that there was a history of these financial institutions engaging in predatory practices that were prioritizing profit over people, from the housing, to other types of lending, how they were offering accounts. And it came to a head. It came to a head in this 2008 mortgage crisis, a period where I witnessed firsthand the impact, the glaring gaps that mortgage regulation or lack thereof had when it came to like protecting consumers from predatory lending. And this was critical because we saw the devastation that it had on so many communities across the country. And so, like, that is my background of spending 15 years in the financial sector prior to getting into this work that I've been doing for like the last 8 years of more financial advocacy and activism. And so out of that, you started to say, like, we got to have better protections to be able, so this financial crisis does not happen again, so we won't have this great recession. And so the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, was born out of this priority of saying that we need to be able to make sure that there's proper protections in place for consumers. And so what we've seen when it comes to this the CFPB is that as the financial landscape has evolved, so have the priorities of this agency. It's not just about talking about mortgages. We're talking about like a broader range of consumer financial products, credit cards, payday loans, auto lending, student loans, like the student debt crisis that's happening right now. And each expansion has been data driven, responding to new forms of exploitation and gaps in these consumer protections. And right, in which we know that this adaptability is incredibly important for any regulator who's tasked with protecting everyday consumers like us when it comes to like as financial innovation moves at a faster pace than like regulation and protection. And right, and so we've seen the CFPB in the last years have engaged really into talking about financial technology, which there's an acronym it calls fintech, right? Digital lending, buy now, pay later, these app-based banking services. And so as this vital evolution happens, like fintech can be good and it can be able to increase access, especially for those who live in these banking deserts and communities that historically don't have the financial services that we need, but it can introduce new risk. And we need to be able to make sure that we have that this entity to be able to help us. And like this, the effectiveness of this entity depends on its ability to be able to listen and learn from the communities who are most impacted by financial harm. And we need some type of approach that is proactive, not just reactive, one that uses data, storytelling, to surface emerging issues that center the voices of those who are often left out of these policy conversations, those who are first and worst impacted by injustice. And so that's what like that is my insight to the CFPB, and I've kind of grown in my personal understanding of the financial industry and like how we need to be able to change it to do better.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many answers to this question that I almost hesitate to pose it thusly. But what I guess put it this way: what has you most concerned over the last couple of months with what's happening right now in that agency?
Right.
Yeah,
And like,
it's
you
a
know,
laundry
like
list.
that's a big one, right? So I guess I'll start with the people, right? The
Yeah.
CFPB is an employer of many people, you know, across the country. We saw a massive staff reduction, letting go over thousands of people. I think it was almost like 1,500. It might be like 14 or something like that. And so it's leaving only a couple of hundred people, maybe 200 staff to be able to carry out the duty of protecting our consumers. So one, you know, the reduction is it's taking away jobs. And then two, when it comes to actually us who are using these products and living in this system, there's less people who are able to monitor and make sure that we're protected, right? And so you've seen that the CFPB getting caught up in these political fights, which consumer protection should be everybody stands for that, right? Because when one person thrives, we can all thrive. And so we're seeing that the CFPB as it is right now is under a lot of attack, and it's like the future functionality of the agency is at risk because of like do they have the mandate to continue to do the work that they're doing? We're seeing when it has a scaling down of it, we also are seeing like a changing of priorities. The new leadership that's in place, they're taking this they're shifting away from an aggressive like enforcement stance that we've seen in prior years. And the agency is now focusing on focusing its limited resources on like a narrow set of priorities. Like, you know, they're only talking about mortgages that have the highest priority. They're like, you know, they're only talking about fraudulent charges and fees, yet the CFPB was here trying to be able to roll back medical debt and making sure that it's not appearing on our credit reports, right? Because it's not indicative. You getting sick is not indicative of you being able to pay your bills, right? And so like there's a fight to be able to make sure that does not appear on our credit report and rolling back excessive overdraft fees. And so it's interesting how there is being pick and choose about how we what type of protections that we engage in. And there's been this strategic shift of like, you know, back to only focusing on certain banks and like reversing its like previous what I told you about like engaging in financial technologies, the wild wild west of like innovation. And so what happens is that this is signaling this broader, I would say, you know, could be dangerous rollback of hard won consumer protections. And it's
Hmm.
signaling to the government that and to people that we're not prioritizing people. And that they don't, and these people who are these bad players can act with impunity.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that one of the sort of ways that we have been talking to you all from the Consumer Reports perspective, one of them has been on individual rules, like the one that Stefan was just mentioning about overages and sorry about medical debt and whether that should appear under credit report, or the other thing I just slipped into saying out loud, which is overages, credit card overages, and the limit that banks can charge you on things along those lines. So you got all these specific rules. You've got the general problem of staffing at CFPB and the fact that they are trying to cut at some points up to 90% of the staff that's there. I want to mention, Mark Woodburn in the question and answer very early on in this call said, "I need help with the credit card companies not reversing a duplicate charge." That's the kind of thing that a fully staffed CFPB is there in the breach to help us do. And then, I think that it's very important that we also mention like the budget fight that's happening right now. There's a lot in this budget that's very consumer facing, but one of the things is a 70% reduction in funding for the CFPB, kind of coming at you from all angles here, right? Staffing, individual rules, funding, all those kinds of things. I want to pick up though on kind of an overall trend here that I think you and the Hip Hop Caucus are really kind of able to weigh in on here. Um, I'm seeing a lot in the chat about people either saying, "Hey, my rep is just not on board with any of this stuff, and I got no way to talk to him," or "My rep is a liberal Democrat, and they are totally on board with the CFPB. Is it even worth talking to them?" Where do you fit in there, and what's your kind of like overall advice to people? What should they be doing? How do you ask people to keep going when it feels like they're hitting both of those different kinds of brick walls?
I'll say a couple of things. Like first, for me, I believe that the work is so important that we must continue. Obviously, you must rest. You like I think that the work is so important that it must continue, but there needs to be rest here. I do believe that it is important for us to it's important for us to make sure that we are staying engaged, being understanding how the systems of power work, and understanding how things happen at a federal, state, and local level, making sure people are more informed about what the responsibilities of their of their elected officials are, and staying engaged every year, every election, and making sure that somebody is representing your value. And then choosing to get into the fight yourself. And the fight doesn't always have to be saying that you're running for your office yourself. It's using your voice, it's using your music, it's using your arts, and to be able to like help be trusted messengers, to be able to to make sure that we're well informed and we're moving in the right direction. I also personally just believe that it's important for us to be able to not only stop the bad, but be forward leaning and build the good. I believe in creating spaces to where we create new shared values that make the old models and ways of doing business obsolete. And so I find these things are what's keeping, like how you can get in the fight. At Hip Hop Caucus, we're fighting for voting rights. We're talking about climate, rights. We're talking about economic justice. We're talking about civil and human rights. And so these things are intersectional, right? And so we see these are as issues that everybody should be able to rally around, of pushing us forward for us to be better together. And so like there's multiple ways that you can engage in. And if you go to Hip Hop Caucus, you can be able to sign up and keep track of and engage with us throughout the process.
Yeah, thank you. A wonderful, comprehensive answer. Um, I'm gonna take moderator prerogative because I think that I know I only have 7 minutes left, and I know I'm supposed to be starting to land the plane now. But I really think that I have a kind of a wide-ranging question for you, and I want to know where it hits before we start to land the plane.
Yeah.
Why do you think that people carry so much shame about money and about their financial selves? Um, where does that come from, and how does that affect like how we weigh in on questions of debt and questions of who has the right to financial protections?
I think this is incredibly important, especially as we're in mental health awareness month of May. I think financial shame is something that is not talked about enough. financial trauma, to be even more explicit, right? People are carrying this around because there's been this belief that financial shame, you know, is a personal failing, when it's not. It's a systemic tool. We're taught to blame ourselves. We're taught to believe, we're living in a system that prioritizes profit over people, trapping people in cycles of debt, while selling this lie that, struggle, it's okay to, like it's like this struggle that you have to struggle all the time, right? Like, we see these Black and brown communities who are targeted by prime mortgages, like, and they're shamed as if they're this bad decision, right? And not the banks that design these exploitative practices. Like, there's policies and regulators who gaslight, who drop cases against predatory lenders and weaken rules, like how we were talking about medical debt, which signals exploitation is acceptable. This meritocracy, is a myth. Like, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps ignores the systemic barriers that are in place, like, and stagnant wages. And so this financial shame is and this financial trauma exist because we prioritize a system that does not know how to understand that prioritizing people can have a proper return on investment. Helping people helps us all, and we don't have to live in this binary choice of choosing people or choosing profit. And when we talk about financial trauma, it's incredibly helpful, to be able to give people a solid understanding that there's nothing wrong with you. And there's something wrong with the system as it is, and that's why we're in this fight to be able to create change.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm gonna ask Kate to bring the slides back up for my closing session here. But before I do that, I do have, or as she does that, rather, I'm gonna go one more sort of like, you know, the phrase that I hear from you and the Economic Justice Platform at the Hip Hop Caucus is that you are focused on the first and worst impacted. And I want to know, there's a healthy chat here about contacting your representatives and about, advocating for the CFPB. But I want to set the idealist thinking even higher. What does it look like for you for the first and worst impacted to actually be centered in financial reforms and financial justice?
I love this, right? And for me, I would say it's giving people hope. It's helping people see that we don't have to sit back and take what's happening to us. It's providing good data, which leads to great reporting, which leads to better organizing and storytelling. It's like organizations like Consumer Report, you just put out an incredible article of talking about like hair braiding and the toxic chemicals that are in that, and how this type of product impacts, marginalized communities, Black and brown communities, low income communities, and like, and that touches with our environmental work. So much so that my colleague Brittany, she did an incredible stand-up comedy, which is incredibly hilarious. She was talking about like what it means when it comes to like, this, how expensive it is to get more healthier products and services when it comes to braiding hair, or do you have to choose to be exposed to toxic hair, and that's crazy. And so, like, I that's what being able to have well-informed data that you provide, it helps people be able to use their art to be able to reach broader audiences. And that, for me, that's centering our communities.
Love that crossover shout out. Appreciate you. Yeah, if you haven't seen it already, and I'm not going to scramble to try to get it in the last 2 minutes here, but I'm going to send around some of the links that Stefan's referencing there about the testing about hair care products that we've been doing over here at Consumer Reports. Very exciting, and thank you for that. I'm going to start my rundown here. I really appreciate everyone being and asking all these wonderful questions, but I want to challenge you all and pick up on some of the energy that is happening here in the chat in what we're hopefully coming down here. We're going to be hosting a day of action on May 29th, specifically around saving our watchdogs. There are going to be events that are happening in target districts around the country. Some of you I even recognize. I'll shout out Alan and Andrew in the chat, who I've already seen go by, who are helping organize some of those events. But we want everyone to come out on that day of action and make as much noise as we possibly can. And there's a couple of different ways for us to do that. Kate, if you could advance the slides here. One of them is what we've been talking about a lot already. Make calls, send emails. Consumer Reports has many useful tools, which I will be dropping into the follow-up email for how you do that. You know, making a call is easy. Sending an email is easy, and shouldn't take very much of your time. But this audience that I'm seeing here, I think I can challenge y'all to do more than just make a call or just send an email. And I think that what more to me means is to start out with, can you get 5 other people to join you in making a call on the 29th? Can you get 5 friends, coworkers, loved ones, anywhere in the country to sit down with you? You can even jump on a Zoom call like we're doing now and all make the calls together. And just knock out 5. So that's my request for everyone who's hearing my voice right now. On the 29th, if you are not in one of our target districts, make a call and get others to make a call with you. Next slide. We're also going to be asking, I mean, like I mentioned, Consumer Reports members are hosting events. We're trying to do, if our Congress people will talk to us, we're trying to go through the formal process of sitting down with them for a legislative session. But if you don't want to do that, there are a couple ways that you can just sort of drop by a congressperson's office. And I'm going to drop another link into chat right now. This one is if you'd like to sign up to do that with us. We will help you in every step of the way. There are some amazing organizers here at Consumer Reports who would love to help you figure out what the right kind of event would be for you. If it's an event where you want to make a big deal, you want to get in media there, let's do that. If it's a Save the CFPB lit drop at your congressional office and you don't think your congressperson is listening to you, let's do that. I'm going to do a little product placement here. Check out my cool Consumer Reports hat. If you want us to mail you one of those hats, use this form. All these things can be part of our activism together. And let's make sure that we are doing a good job of keeping the pressure on folks for saving our financial watchdogs. One more slide here, Kate, because the last thing oh, well, ignore that the form says April 14th. Don't worry, we're still doing it even here in May on into June. Continue to use that form to let us know about events or let us know that you're interested in events, because we will continue to use that even if I have to go back and update the date. We're still checking in on the back end. So if you want to raise your hand, that's the right form to do it. Finally, we have one of the things that I saw in our Q&A here a couple of different times is a request for how Consumer Reports is stepping into the void left by a lot of these agencies no longer being as staffed as we might like or being as strong as we might like. The short answer to that is that we can't. Government agencies are large, they're powerful, they have lots of staff, and we're not going to be able to do all the things that they do. But one way that we can step into the void a little bit is to capture the stories of consumers that are being hurt in different marketplaces. If you have a story about something that falls into the CFPB range, if you have a story about something that falls into consumer protection, consumer product safety, financial safety, please share it with us. Kate dropped the link earlier into the Share Your Story tool, but I will be circulating a specific Share Your Story option. And I want to say, sometimes that can feel just like shouting into the void. I promise you, it isn't. And here's why. We take those stories, and not only do we look for how we can help individual people address those individual problems, but more importantly, we're also keeping, not more importantly, but additionally importantly, we're also keeping track of where those stories are. We're looking for patterns. We're looking for problems in the larger, financial marketplace. And if we get lots of stories about a particular company or even about a particular type of service, amazing. Like that allows us to figure out to send our investigative journalists. It allows us to figure out where to send our testers. It really helps us share stories and speak with the voice of consumers. So that's my pitch for you to keep a swivel for stories that are affecting you, but also for your community, also for people who are outside the realm of your own pocketbook or your own product safety. We want everyone to be sending us your stories. And in some ways, that might be the best place for Consumer Reports in this moment, filling that void of where the CFPB or the CPSC or other organizations used to be doing active listening. Maybe that's our job now, to do that work. Love seeing the call outs to fivecalls.org. They're fantastic. We also have our own call tools that we will be sending around. Um, okay, I think that is, well, I'm 5 minutes over, y'all. That's more than my time. I'm gonna say thank you. Here's what I'm gonna do. Thank you to all my Consumer Reports colleagues. One more reminder that we're gonna send the video around to everybody, and also all the links that have been flashing by here. A special thank you to Stefan and the Hip Hop Caucus for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you guys with us. And I will leave you, Stefan, with the last word. What do you feel like the most important thing that we haven't said yet in the entire world of consumer financial protections is to say as we let people go?
We're gonna be all right. We're gonna
All
be all right.
right. There it is. I love that. Thank you all. Lovely to see you. And yeah, I will capture the entire chat and all the wonderful things zipping by and look forward to sharing that all back. 24, 36 hours to do that. And thank you all so much for your time and really appreciate the active engagements. And see you all next month.